I think I already, like before I went into marriage, I had this idea of divorce is an option, and it's probably the first option. I come from a home of like separated parents, so my mom spent 20 plus years with my dad, and there's like ups and downs, but uh, I said I don't want to waste that much time. I want to do it right from the get-go. I don't want to affect my kids. I don't want to have kids with this person if they're not the right person. So I had that in mind already.
Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your husband's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if it feels hopeless right now. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm sharing 3 secrets for restoring the intimacy in your marriage. If you ever feel like the spark and connection in your marriage isn't what it used to be, and you want to bring that back, that spontaneous, life giving passion that you once had, those deep conversations, this episode is for you. My guest Mina was suffering through Cold Wars every weekend and worried about her man's lies. But when she dedicated herself to trying some new skills, she was able to create peace in her home. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. That's coming up. But first, here are 3 secrets to restore the intimacy in your marriage. Because it's heartbreaking to feel like there's mostly distance and coldness between you and your man, especially when you long for that closeness that you once had. When you're missing that spark, you feel a constant lonely ache, even when you're not alone. It leaves you wondering if you'll ever feel desired again. So, here is the secret, the overarching secret that you need to restore the intimacy in your marriage. Are you ready? It's just one word. Then I'll tell you the 3 secrets. The word is respect. It's respect. And if you're anything like I was, you are probably thinking, but why should I respect him? He has to earn my respect first, because I don't respect him. That's a big part of the problem. Well, that's exactly how I felt too. But I remember feeling that way in the bad old days in my marriage and having one wife ask me a powerful question about that. It was a question that made me look at things differently. Here's what she asked me. And by the way, this is not what she said at all, but this is the question that I was left with. She said, "What made you decide to be bound to him for life if he's such a loser pants?" Yeah, not exactly what she said, but that's what I got out of her question. Like, why did you choose him? And that one made me think a little bit. If I chose a loser pants, wouldn't that also make me a loser pants too? And I felt defensive, like I wouldn't have I wouldn't have chosen a loser pants. So that led me to think about what had I been drawn to about my husband, And I remembered that it was because I remember thinking he was so wise and generous and talented and sweet, and he knew so much, and he was musically talented, and also I loved how adventurous he was and how handsome. And I realized in answering that question that he was still that same guy. And when I remembered all that, I felt grateful for him instead of resentful and contemptuous. The loser pants part just kind of faded away. And gratitude is a much happier feeling than resentment or contempt. And so is feeling respectful of him. So maybe you've heard that you should be respectful or you have to be respectful, or maybe it's in a religious text that you hold dear that it says that, or you think he's expecting you to be respectful, and maybe you're like me, and that just makes you resist being respectful even more. Yeah. But what I like about respect and choosing respect, deciding to be respectful, is that, but yeah, besides that, it's the best aphrodisiac on the planet for men and that it makes the intimacy skyrocket. It's that it feels better to me to be respectful than it does to be disrespectful. When I'm disrespectful, it feels gross. It feels yucky. It feels hairy and dirty. And I didn't notice it before back in the old days because I didn't realize there was another option. and that I was the one who was deciding to show up disrespectfully. I thought that's just the way it was. That was just the truth. So, what if you're not feeling respectful of your husband right at this moment, right? It can happen to the best of us. How do you become respectful? Well, I'm glad you asked because I have these three terrific cheat phrases. These are the secrets I want to show you right here. Let's go through them. The first one is the phrase, three words. Go ahead and write this down. I hear you. I hear you. And what's magical about this phrase is that you can listen to your man respectfully without agreeing or disagreeing. So you're not going to be a devil's advocate and figure out where he, put holes in his theories or see where he might have forgot about something. You're actually just letting him have the floor and you're listening to what he cares about. And I just remember using this one time with John. I was really intentionally thinking, I'm going to use this cheap phrase. I hear you. And we were out to lunch and he was talking about his marathon plans. He was talking about where he was going to run, how many miles he was going to go, and where he was going to get his water from. And I'm not particularly interested in marathon plans or marathons. But it was interesting because I just remember during this conversation, he was he was sharing so openly, and I really felt connected to him because it was his ideas and his thoughts. It's something that was important to him, and he was sharing it with me, and he's my beloved, and I got to just hear what was on his mind, and that is something I really treasure now is getting to hear all that. So I hear you is a wonderful cheat phrase for becoming respectful and just becoming a better listener also without having to agree or disagree with what he's saying. You're just bearing witness. So that's the first cheat phrase I recommend for becoming more respectful and therefore skyrocketing the intimacy, restoring it in your marriage. The second cheat phrase is whatever you think. Whatever you think is what I defer to whenever I realize my husband's asking me something that is, it's really up to him, like which socks he's going to wear, right? Or which freeway he's going to take to get somewhere. And I can just let him make that decision, even if he is asking me what I think he should do or what yeah, if he's asking me what I think he should do, a lot of times that's because I've made it known that I think he should do things a certain way. And he's just kind of falling back into wanting to make sure he doesn't displease me in some way. It's so important to my husband that I'm happy. So, and in the early days, I had trained him to always ask me before he made any decisions, like, what to order for dinner. I use it all the time to this day. If he's saying, well, should I pay that by credit card or make an automatic transfer or whatever? I'm like, oh, whatever you think. What I like about this in terms of restoring respect is it does a couple of wonderful things. Is one is it lets him know that I really do trust him to handle important decisions for his life and for our life together. He handles a lot of things for both of us, like our finances, like he pays all our bills through ACH or credit card or cash, whatever, however he does it. And it also unburdens me. So instead of feeling like I have to solve a problem, I'm relying on his wise brain by just deferring to his thinking and saying whatever you think. So I love that. That's the second secret for restoring the intimacy in your marriage is to remember to tell him that you trust him by saying whatever you think. And the third one that I lean on pretty heavily is to this day, I have to use this phrase, unfortunately, feels unfortunate because it means I've been disrespectful. And that is, I apologize for being disrespectful and then I fill in the blank with whatever I just did. And I just had to do this yesterday because we had this very leisurely Labor Day weekend, especially on Sunday. We're just lazing about all day. It was delicious. It was wonderful. And then on Monday, I was like, okay, I want to go for a walk or I want to, maybe I'll go for a run. I don't usually go for a run. Usually when I have the desire to go for a run, I lie down until it passes. But on this day, I just was feeling really energetic and was suggesting these kinds of things. And he said, actually, today's my rest day. Like he works out and he was having a purposeful rest day on Monday. So, and I was like, no. Like I was disappointed, but it was more than just disappointment. I was like, really? I mean, we just did that all day yesterday. You rested yesterday. Why do you need to rest anymore? Like questioning his judgment about his own need to rest, right? So pretty disrespectful. So I apologized for being disrespectful. And I could see I had really like he was yeah, he was hurt. That's what it was. He was hurt when I had said that. Like you rested yesterday. What's your problem? Was my tone or my attitude, probably the look on my face, the whole thing. Not pretty, not pretty. And so I apologized for being disrespectful, and he received my apology. He thanked me for it, and everything was good again. I was able to put everything right with that magical cheap phrase. I apologize for being disrespectful when I questioned you needing to rest. Right. And this is the thing about disrespect is it doesn't feel good. And I didn't feel good when I did it. And apologizing is uh, accountability. It's true accountability. And that feels really good. So this is part of why I like being respectful so much. And if you are using those three cheat phrases and really just trying to practice the skills in general, and the intimacy still isn't back at your house, even though you're doing it all and you're listening to this podcast and you've read the book and you're still not really getting where you want to be with the intimacy in your relationship, that probably means, almost always means, and this is true for me too, that you need a little more support and encouragement, or we call it encouragement and supervision around my house. John made that up. And you are not alone. Just knowing these three cheap phrases, knowing all the intimacy skills is really vital for having a great relationship. But having support and having a coach, having somebody who asks you powerful questions like, why did you decide to spend the rest of your life with a loser pants? For example, right? That was a powerful question that a wife asked me. A wise woman who had a happy marriage asked me early on, and it changed my entire outlook on how I was showing up in my marriage. And today I want to be respectful. It feels good to be respectful. And I know that doing the intimacy skills by yourself can be tricky. So if it's not feeling so good, well, that's why we have a whole community and coaches to support women who desire that support. They really want to have that breakthrough where they are enjoying the way they are showing up in their relationship, and they're also getting a better response from their husbands because boy, we sure find out that they respond to us so much better when we're respectful. At least it's true for me. It's true for many thousands of students that I've talked to. And so why not you too? Because it's your birthright to feel desired and to feel beautiful and to feel adored and special and taken care of. And we are not giving up until you get all of that, including restoring the intimacy in your marriage. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Mina was suffering through cold wars almost every weekend, and she worried about her man's lying. But when she dedicated herself to trying some new skills, she was able to create peace in her home. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Mina, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be here and honored.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I always like to start out with the bad old days. What was going on in your marriage that wasn't so fun?
Well, before I start with the battle days, I kind of just wanted to talk about how I met my husband because I think it's a little bit different than how most people meet their husbands. But So we're Muslim, so we follow the Islamic faith, and Islam really emphasizes the sanctity and the importance of marriage. And so there's a lot of I wouldn't say rules, but there's a lot of protection in that process of meeting someone to ensure that there's a moral and spiritual bond before that physical, bond where you just all the emotions you can get distracted on what you're really looking for because marriage is supposed to be a lifetime commitment. And so I actually was on a marriage site and I met my husband on October. And we hit it off really well. I mean, from the very get-go, I said, I just want to know the most important things. Like, I didn't care about your favorite color. I just want to know, like, what do you think of, what roles do you play in the household? Like, all of the important questions first. So we got those out of the way, and I think within a first conversation, he was telling me like, when can I speak to your father? Because we do it very like traditional, where it's like he has to ask for my hand, and we don't meet alone unless we are. There's other people around, family, friends. We can't be alone. And so I was like, whoa, hold on, like I don't know, I don't know yet. And so I think the next day I was like, okay, I'll tell my father, we really matched up everything. It just seemed perfect. So fast forward 2 months and we get married. We get married 2 months later. So we don't really date. It's more we just get to know each other for marriage. And it's very serious, but of course you get to know the person's personality and you get to meet their family. And so we met each other's family and we ensured that we clicked in those aspects as well. So everything was great. And now we get to the battle days. I think it was just um, after that first month, just it kind of hit us that we're married, and now there's like expectations on both sides, like I had expectations for my husband and he had expectations for me. And when those two things collide and you're just trying to get to know each other at the same time and commit and, school and like you're back to the real world, it can just be really difficult. So there's a lot of miscommunications and I became extremely jealous, like just anything and controlling. I think I was controlling from before. I just never really recognized it. Um, but I was very controlling now that I think about it. And so anytime he would look to a certain direction, I would be like, what are you looking at? Like, why are you, doing this? Or don't do this. And like I would monitor what he was doing. And I don't know. I just felt this huge insecurity. And I think it was 5 months into marriage, I found some inappropriate content on his phone, and that really just like was heartbreaking. Like I was not expecting it. Like he's this perfect man, right? And I thought like the problem isn't mine. I always like he would tell me things like when we were going through those like jealousy spurts, he would tell me, you need to go see someone, you need to get this fixed. Like this is not okay. And so I that's really hurtful in itself, but of course,
Yeah.
like I was like, okay, maybe he's right. But then when I found that, I was like, no, that it's not me. It's not my problem. It's him, so everything is just him, him, him. And so it was a few months like for me to like finally accept like I didn't want him near me. It was just like a lot of I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe and I'm a big like self-help junkie, so I would always kind of like research things and like Google stuff. And of course, and this is so sad, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be on the podcast, but there's so many lies out there. There's so many bad resources, especially when you're desperate, you know? I mean, everything. I took the quizzes, right? The quizzes that say like does he love me? You know, and you answer these questions, and then it says, oh, he doesn't love you. You should go find someone
Ah.
that loves you. You know, it's something.
Oh,
And like the whole, like, oh, he's a narcissist and you need to set boundaries and
oh,
all of these things. So I was searching those things, and it just pushed me further and further to being less accountable and less close to him, more towards divorce. And I think I already, like, before I went into marriage, I had this idea of divorce is an option, and it's probably the first option. I come from a home of like separated parents, so my mom spent 20 plus years with my dad, and there's like ups and downs, but uh, I said I don't want to waste that much time. I want to do it right from the get-go. I don't want to affect my kids. I don't want to have kids with this person if they're not the right person. So I had that in mind already. So then I discover that things are getting a little bit better, I'm still like I felt justified in all of my actions. I felt justified in wanting to control him and wanting to see what he was doing and in wanting all of this and he was very truthful from the very beginning, when I discovered I talked to him and he like took accountability. He said, "This is something that I've been struggling with for a long time." And he was
mm.
very ashamed of it. He was
Oh,
extremely accountable. But that I think that is the beginning of me breaking that emotional safety because of my reactions after that. I was like, that's not accountability. I didn't take his acceptance of it and his wanting to change as accountability. I took that as, you're just, those are just excuses,
it's just a
like
failure. He just blew
exactly.
it. And your
Yeah.
worst nightmare came true
Yeah.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just very distraught and but I said, I could live with this. Like this, I know this society pushes towards that. And like I am aware of like the over sexualization of everything, And so I was like, uh, I kind of feel a little bit empathy, but I don't know. I'll think about it. But after that, I didn't trust him as much. I didn't
Sure.
trust him,
Sure.
and I often went like what you call shopping for pain. So, I think that's a perfect term for it because I love shopping. And I'm just so used to shopping. So I was shopping for pain all the time. And I did find a lot of really like just some very hurtful things, from his past, nothing from our marriage, nothing after we got married, something that happened like years prior that I thought he should have disclosed to me.
Mm,
And it just it broke me completely. And
mm.
after that, I was like, yeah, like I want to separate. And um I'm Hispanic, so I don't know if you're familiar with like Mexican soap operas, but there's a lot of drama going on there. It's like, the man has to chase the woman. So I was very much of like, I run away from home. I'm running down the street. I want him to like go chase me,
Ah,
all of that stuff. Like I was like, if he doesn't do this, then he doesn't love me. And and I'm very ashamed to say like, that's so immature, but I guess I had to go through it. Um, but so that around that time, I went to my mom's house and I told her, I can't, I want to separate and I want to like reconsider this. And no kids are involved, so it was great. It wasn't great, but it was manageable.
It was going to be clean. Wasn't
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it was early on. So I said, this is good timing. I wouldn't have wasted so much of my time already. So I think the weeks after that, he was really trying to get me back, and he would text me and call me and, like say how he was working on things and like trying to be better. And I wanted a plan. I wanted a game plan. I said, I won't accept this unless you show me that you're trustworthy. And I was more so uh in Mexico we have a saying that people are they're 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 guilty until proven innocent.
Oh,
So he was always guilty. So he had to
yeah.
prove himself as innocent. And so he did tell me, like, let's fix this. And I really missed him. And I knew I loved him. And I knew how perfect we were together. From
Oh,
the very beginning, I had never met anyone that I felt so comfortable with. And so, like, we matched up so well. And I decided, I said, okay, we'll go back, but you're gonna go to these recovery programs. And I had a friend that was that had gone through something very similar. And so she was giving me all of the advice. She was like, you should set boundaries. And I love the term boundamentums. I love that so much because that's what they are. They really are that. It's like if you don't do this, this is the consequence. But I was never good at following through with them. Like it was like, hey, and then and if he didn't react, I was like, I'm doing something wrong. So we had those. So I like my friend had told me like maybe you should set a contract. If he does this, then you do this and stuff like that. And part of that was we need to go to therapy. We need to go to counseling. So we went to couples counseling, and then I went to an individual therapist because I said this is affecting me so much. Like I had nightmares, and I was struggling mentally. I just wasn't myself anymore. And
hmm.
I just put all of my focus on him and what he was doing wrong. And like when I think back to those days, I just think darkness because I really was in a dark space. So I thought therapy might help. And I was a huge believer in therapy. I could never afford it, but after I got married, I was like, okay, I think I can afford it now. And so I went to therapy, and it was a huge letdown. I mean, the therapist was very kind, but the accountability aspect of things is really missing, in this whole like paradigm of how do you fix yourself? There's a lot of go back in time, like I would go pay like $200 almost, and sit on the couch and just talk about, like, he's like, okay, tell me about your father. And I would be crying. And then he's like, oh, time's up, sorry, we'll talk next week. And so that was like individual therapy. So I was like, okay, maybe it's helping. I don't know. Everyone says this is the way to go, right? So I should try it. And then we did couples therapy. The guy was really sweet. He was an intern, so it wasn't that pricey, and he got to get like good practice with us. But I mean, it was just me feeling heard by the therapist and my husband just defending himself most of the
Oh,
session
hmm.
until he finally, like my husband said, we can't do this. And of course, that was like a huge letdown for me because it was like, you don't want to change,
That's right.
like you don't
That's
want
right.
to do something for our marriage. And so yeah, that was before our first anniversary. And
Oh,
then things were getting a little bit better. I know. I know.
painful year. Very painful
Yeah.
year.
It was, but it's growing pains. Like you
Yeah.
have to go through these things in order to really get to where you want to be. And so I didn't have much hope because since it was right at the beginning of my marriage, I thought this is what marriage is. This was the only example of marriage I had, and I didn't really have in my family, I didn't have many good marriages to look up to think this is, this is how you do. I mean, and I don't want to speak like just for like all Hispanic culture, but there is like a cultural aspect of not getting married. In Islam and in my religion, it's a lot of yes, marriage is like sanctified and you have to get married. There's no relationship before marriage. But in like my Hispanic background, it's, you just date and then you have a child and you're together forever kind of
That's
thing.
it.
Yeah. So, so fast forward after that first anniversary, things were getting a lot better. And we actually did a road trip across the nation. It was a 36-hour road trip and it was beautiful. I mean, we don't listen to music. We try not to. We listen to one or two songs, but we try not to be too influenced by this like love culture, of like just too distracted by the media and all of this. So we didn't listen to music and the whole trip, I mean, we talked to each other. We were actually talking to each other, and I think we got into two arguments only. And it was mostly like my triggers, it was mostly like, oh, I'm triggered by this. And, that kind of me blaming him and that becoming like a Cold War. Um, but that was amazing, and that was the glimpse of hope that I needed. That was like an okay. I think this is the man of my dreams. Like I think this is my husband. Like this is the person that I am meant to be with. After that, and this is where I meet you, but after that, we had to move apartments from our first apartment. We moved to a larger one. And as I mentioned, I love shopping. So I went shopping for a little bit more pain. It was too good, like I'm not used to, like my husband would tell me, it's like, you're not used to peace. Like you need something. Like, I just wasn't used to not having something going on. So so I said, I need to find something, and I did. I did. I found something that happened years prior to me, like nothing in our marriage. My husband is a very proper and like he has well-mannered, and we don't have um relationships with the opposite gender, like just friendships with the opposite gender. We're very, if we have couples, friends, like it's me with the female and him with the male, it's, we don't have any of that. So I've never had to deal with him texting or any of that stuff, females. So yeah, I found something, and of course I had to bring it up to him, because communication is key
It's
in a
key.
relationship.
Everyone says so. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone says so. You have to communicate and you have to be clear. You have to say the truth. And so I did, and I had to tell him how bad of a husband he was and how, horrible of a human being he was and how I shouldn't have married him. And
Just
so
being honest, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
just communicating.
Just communicating the truth. Yeah.
So that move was horrible. Like it was such a bad move, a Cold War throughout it. And just imagine moving homes during a Cold War. It was
Hard
just,
enough already. Moving's
yeah,
awful. And then, yeah.
exactly. Moving is awful and it was horrible. And I think that was like the first time after we moved and everything happened, I really was like unhappy with the situation. I said like, really, what happened? Like I actually pondered like what actually happened right now, you know? And I said nothing really. This was all from the past, and like nothing is happening. So why are we like this? And then finally I started to think maybe I had something to do with it. Like
Oh,
maybe there's like a glimpse of maybe I am. responsible for my actions. You know, and I was, so I started searching more things, and I think I was still searching like the quizzes. Does he love me? How to tell if he's a narcissist, and this whole idea of gaslighting, and if he calls you crazy, he's gaslighting you. And um, and I laugh now, but I used to believe these
Yeah.
things like so wholeheartedly, until I
Yeah.
think it was one time my husband told me, "You're gaslighting me." And I said, "What?" I
Wait
said,
a minute. No, that's
"Yeah,
something he does to you, not the other way around.
exactly, exactly. I'm the woman, I'm the weak one. Come on."
Yeah.
So, so I was searching, and I searched my husband uh never apologizes. And your article came up, or your blog post came up. And it just, it really resonated with my soul. Like this, this idea of accountability is huge in Islam. In Islam, we actually have the concept of paper. I don't know if all the listeners know, but your concept of paper is like we each have a paper. Whatever he does on his paper is his paper. Whatever you do is your paper. We have the same concept in Islam, and it's the concept of you have a book of deeds. So you have good deeds and you have bad deeds. And you need to fill your book of good deeds. And everyone has that book, and there's certain things that only God can judge. Um, and so that aspect was in the back of my mind, and it was in my heart. I just didn't think that applied to my husband. And
Yeah.
he's my husband. He lives with me. I need to
Yeah.
control him. So I remember that, and reading your article, I think the first thing was um it was, I don't know the order, but it was something on like you have to feel your feelings, which I felt validated, and then you have to clean your side of the street. And that that was really freeing, because I think I felt very empowered by just that. I felt like I can do something instead of expecting him to do something and not getting those results. I can actually do something myself. And then he showed how to do it, and I was like, from the very get-go, I was like, this is amazing, like this is great. So I searched your name, I read all of your blog posts, and I got all of your books. And so I started reading Surrendered Wife and Empowered Wife at the same time. Like, I don't even know how I did it, but I did. And I started with gratitude, and I wasn't sharing them all with him, but I was sharing some of them. I was texting him some of the gratitudes, and I would do this while I was at work. And then I did some self-care. I'd take naps, and that was an odd concept for me, and it was a little bit, and it still is. It still is, like, it's not an odd concept now, but it's a little difficult sometimes to be
Kind of
consistent with it.
uncomfortable to put yourself down in your bed for a little while. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Like too
Yeah,
indulgent. Is that what you mean? Or,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's uncomfortable to think about myself.
yeah.
Um, but I started doing those, and those were, before then, before I got to the part in your book that says don't tell your husband just yet. I had to, yeah, I had to share it with them. I was just so excited, and I think at the same time I wanted some acknowledgement,
Yeah.
like you see, like you see all the work I'm putting in, but I told them I wanted to know if your concept of respect was in line with what he thought respect was. Because we do in our religion, we also believe respect is very important, very, very important for both parties. And and I'm sure there's so much like evidence for it. And I just, or like how to be respectful, but I don't know. There's a missing piece there. I didn't know what respect was, especially because um, I don't think I really saw it in relationships in my family. And I'm not just speaking of like married couples. I speak like mother, daughter, mother, son, and all of those relationships. Um, and I so I asked him, I said, so what is respect to you? Like what do you think is being respectful? He said, well, when someone doesn't interrupt you, I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that was like the biggest sign. I was like, oh my goodness. So then I tell him all about like what you said respect was and and all he's like so into it. He's like, wow, this is amazing. This is great. And he started like thanking me for things. And he's always been a very grateful man. Like I have so much to learn from him. Like I think he applies your skills even before I knew about them. Like he applies them. Like he's very grateful and made me feel like appreciated or anything like that. So I did that, and then I continued reading your book and said, "Wait, don't tell him yet," And
Oh,
so I was like, "Oh shoot, okay." Well, I think it was 2 months, 2 months in to practicing the skills. School got a little bit. I was finishing my master's, so I there had a lot of schoolwork, and I just didn't know how to, like manage everything at the same time, and so I started dropping the skills. I started going back to my controlling ways. I think stress really got to me. I stopped doing self-care and here comes we have to move for school. We had to move to a different state, and we were going to live there temporarily, but my husband was very supportive throughout all of that. I mean, financially we weren't in the best of places, but he never questioned it. He
mm,
said, okay, we'll make the move, and it wasn't earning him more money. It wasn't doing anything for him, but it was just for me to to finish school. So we move, and things are going okay. I mean, they're not the best anymore because I'm not practicing the skills. I'm just like going back to my old ways. But I had a little bit of the gist of the skills now, you know.
yeah.
Like when I felt like it, I would apologize maybe sometimes, Um and he was a big fan of like telling me apologize. Whenever he felt like I needed to apologize, he would tell me apologize now, and that was really difficult. So I apologized less and less, and it was just getting a little bit more difficult. And I went shopping for paint again, and I was like, I need to see more. I had his tablet, and I found some stuff, of course. So I found something, and I bring it up to him again, and I'm just very hurt. And again, all those doubts of like, should I be in this relationship? At this point, we had moved to a town that we didn't have family or friends there. So we kind of just had to through it. And we did. We did. We put through it. We got through the hump. And at that point, he would tell me, like you should read Laura Doyle again. And he would, he calls your book the submissive wife. Or the respectful wife. So he would tell me like, you should read that book, The Submissive Wife or Respectful Wife or something like that. You should read it again.
And you're like, no way, I'm not ever reading it now. Right?
Yeah.
That's my reaction anyway. Yeah, yeah. And I'm never apologizing either because you told me
Yes.
to.
Yeah. So I I told you no, I'm gonna read a book. Yeah, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it anymore.
Oh, oh
And
my
so
gosh. Oh, I missed that. Shoot. You told him what now?
oh, I said, I don't believe in it anymore. Like I don't want to read it. And which wasn't true. I just didn't want him to know. I actually did open it because I had it on my laptop and I did open it and I was like reviewing it.
Because you didn't want him to have the satisfaction of
Exactly.
knowing that you were going to do what he said. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know.
So I started a little bit getting back to the skills, but I wasn't too convinced. And at this point, I'm finishing school. And we actually buy our first home and we move closer to his family and things are going okay, but I had gone back to my like controlling habits. So I had gone back to just being very suspicious, not trusting. At this point, I'm listening to the podcasts, to your podcast, and I hadn't like re-listened or reread your book, but I was just like kind of getting that. I was really busy with work as well, so I didn't feel like I had time. And so things were going, oh, they were getting worse. And that's when we had our Cold Wars every weekend, like it was just our relationship needed fixing. And there's always something that needed to be fixed and needed to be talked about. And like we would be sitting in the living room and I would say, hey, so remember that comment you told me like 3 days ago? What did you mean by that? And then, then he would say, he's like, you really don't like peace. Like you don't like peace. You say, oh, there's a peaceful moment. Here, let's talk about a problem. And I would just say, like, no, I want to fix things. Like I want to make them better. And it just kept on going on like that. We would have a conversation and then I would interrupt him and he felt disrespected and then he would get angry and then we just wouldn't talk. And I would be like, he has anger issues. Like there's something I never really put that in my head though, that he had anger issues because he was never like that kind. He was never the kind to be angry, except when I interrupted him. Like that was really, really painful for him. And so like things were going on and we would get better and we had ups and downs. And then it was right before our second anniversary. Um, he something happened, and he he told me that he had been going back to inappropriate content, and I was heartbroken. And at this point, I just said, I I really like want to separate. I can't stand this, and he had a work trip to go to, so he went on his work trip, and I stayed at home and I said, like, don't come back. And we separated for about 3 weeks. And like the first week was really dreadful. Like I didn't know what to do. And of course I went searching for more answers. And the Empowered Wife book, your books were like in the back of my mind, but I said this doesn't deal with this problem. This isn't the solution to this problem. Because you say don't control your husband. That's not what I want to like. I want to control my husband. That's what I want to do.
Ah,
So,
yeah.
like it didn't sit well. Even though I saw it working, I said, no, I don't want to do this right now. So I kept on looking for resources and I wanted to mention this because I'm sure a lot of people are dealing with this. But I found resources. I was like following everything that it said, and it had like a roadmap of you have to have like a contract set, and you have to have separate bank accounts, and you have to have a suitcase ready for, another relapse. And if this ever happens, you leave. And it was a lot of like just that kind of mentality of this is how you can, quote unquote control. Um, so I don't know, this time it didn't really sit right. I thought I really couldn't do this. So weeks passed by and my husband was very sweet. I mean, he was living with his parents for those weeks, and his parents live about an hour away from here. And like there were times where I would call him and say like, "Hey, can you take out the trash?" And he would drive like an hour to come and take out the trash and like just do things around the house. And oh, and during that time I missed him, and I did not want, I knew in my heart I didn't want to get a divorce. So, it wasn't until then though that I jumped off the fence because I think I was always on the fence and I didn't recognize it. I didn't know that I wasn't certain that this was the marriage I wanted.
Mhm.
So I said after that, I will not mention the word divorce anymore, you know. Yeah. And so I we sat down and he would tell me like this is my plan. This is what I'm gonna do. And nothing was good enough. Like it was like I would tell him, you've told me these things before. Like you said this is how you're gonna fix it, and nothing has changed. So I just can't, I can't trust you. And I told him, and he would tell me like to support me, you just have to see me, you have to trust me, and you have to see me in a positive light, which is what you teach us, And this is also very in line with Islam. Our religion really teaches us to always give the benefit of the doubt, to always see the best in people. And unless you have proof, you cannot say that someone is something, you know. You can never say this person doesn't believe, this person, is this and that, if you don't have like you have to have seen it and lived it. And so, and I told him, to better support you, I have to see your internet usage. We have to install a camera. We have to, like every time you have to bring your computer to me, and you have to bring it to me and show me what you've been doing. And, uh, so that didn't really happen, you know. That didn't really happen that way, but he was like, I'm gonna try. He actually bought like a dumb phone, and he's like, we actually, from the very beginning of our marriage, we quit social media. So he doesn't have Instagram or Facebook. He has a Facebook, we have a joint Facebook for like marketplace and things like that, but we don't really go on social media. Like I don't have that problem of like, what is he looking at? Or is he talking to this person or this? So from the very beginning, we've been like helping each other grow. And so he said, I'm gonna leave my laptop at work, and he was working from home, but he was like, I'll leave it, I'll work somewhere. I won't work at home, and I will leave my laptop in the car. And so he was doing that for a while, and that really helped. And things were getting a little bit better. And and this was without practicing the skills. Like I wasn't practicing them. So there were still like cold wars. I would bring the problems up, like you have and I don't like to call it addiction. I really don't like to call it addiction anymore. And he would don't say that word anymore.
But that's how you saw it at the time, it sounds like. That's
Yeah.
how you used to
Yeah.
frame it. Kind of like
Yeah.
the narcissists and the boundaries. That was part of the the conventional wisdom that you probably had read about somewhere, right? That this is an addiction. Okay.
Yeah.
But now that no longer fits for you to call it that.
No, it's it's something that needs to change, I think, but within, and it's doable. It's not like something that lasts forever, and it's something that can be defeated, but You have to work together. It's not a one man show. But yeah, so he was really trying, and I was trying as well. I was trying to not be so controlling,
Mm.
and I was looking for resources and all of this. And um then I think it was a few months after um we we were expecting our first child. And hormones and all of that, so many things were going through my head. And I was very happy. I was very happy to be expecting. However, I was very afraid. I thought I still didn't have that key to being my best self. And I thought, before, I was looking for resources for how to control my husband, how to make him, better. But this time I thought I needed to do that for myself. Like I needed to become better, especially now that I was going to be a mom. And I went back to your skills. Like, with the skills, you need to have a support system. It's so difficult without it. You need someone to hold you accountable. You need someone that's going to be cheering for you. I never had anyone that wasn't cheering for me, but not quite in the way of the skills. I had a lot of friends that wanted the best for me, but they just they would hear me out, but no one had the right solution for it.
Mm.
So I downloaded your book on Audible, and I listened to it again. And this is The Empowered Wife. I actually listened to both of them again, and I actually just bought the a physical copy of your Empowered Wife book, and I'm reading it again as well. And I go to it, whenever I need some help with something, and I've bought it. I've gotten it for so many people as well, for a lot of friends who have, like, newlyweds, and for even strangers. I'm a firm believer. Not everyone, like you say, is ready for it. Not everyone really likes the accountability aspect of it. But for those that are ready, it's life changing. And uh, so I did that, and then shortly after, I think, your Ridiculously Happy Wife program, and I said, "Oh, this is great," and I tried it out. At first, I was a little hesitant. I won't lie. It felt like a sort of a cult, because there was like the OWH, all these terms that I just didn't understand,
A lot of
but
abbreviations,
a lot of
yeah. A lot of
abbreviations.
shorthand, yep.
Exactly, yeah. But there's a guide, for them too. You just have to get used to them. And but I continued with it, and I really enjoyed the group coaching calls. Those were life changing. Those were it just it's the power of being connected with other women is amazing. And even if you're not going through exactly the same thing, the feelings are the same. All of the feelings are the same, and there's always something you can take away from these calls. And the insights that the coaches have are beautiful. And so I was posting, and I was following women's stories, and just every win was like my own win. Like, I would be so excited. It would make my day to hear, like, "Oh, my husband came home," or any of those little stories. Tearing up just to think, like, the power of being so connected. Um, so I could only do that for 3 months. And I actually caught one of because you have a monthly live call, and I caught one of your calls. And it actually, because my internet's not good, I don't know if you remember, but I it cut off
I
at
do
the end.
now. Yeah, I
It
do.
cut off at the end, and you had told me, you said, I can't remember what the issue was, but you said you need to you should go back to gratitudes,
Oh,
like 10 gratitudes for a whole month or something like that. And I was like, no way, like I don't think this is the solution. But something about it was like I was pushing back on like I don't know what it was about it, but I did do it and it did solve my problem. So so thank you.
I hope I didn't say like this is what you should do, but I remember feeling really reluctant to do gratitudes myself. So they can be hard to reach for. I
Yeah,
admire your courage to be open to that.
thank you. But yeah, after that I actually have a very close friend. She I can't describe her as a friend because she's a lot more than that. She's like a mother to me. She's a friend, a sister. She's so many things. And she was, I mean, I met her before I met my husband, and she's been through this journey with me. But she didn't really know about the empowered wife. I told her a little bit about it, but her marriage is probably one of the only marriages that I was like, this is a perfect marriage. Like this is the example of a perfect marriage. And I think she was going through a mini crisis, and I told her, you should listen to this book or you should read it. And she was like, yeah, she was a little hesitant because she thought this was only if like you're going through really bad problems, like only if you really, you're getting a divorce and things. But my things are not that bad. So she actually does start reading it, and she's an overachiever, and she's gonna laugh when she hears this, but she's an overachiever and she's really good at everything. And of course, everything I do, she has to do it even better. So she actually signed up to be a coach, and in a few months she's gonna be a coach. So you know her.
I do. I know her.
You do.
Wow.
And she's been my number one supporter with the skills. She's the one that's like, oh my gosh, I just got into a group coaching call and this was the takeaway. I just have to share it with you, and she's like, oh, this would help you so much. And she's just always reminding me. And she's so grateful. She's like, I can't believe you saved my marriage. And it was like I don't have words for it because her marriage like in my mind was like the best. But there's always those things that you're going through, and her perspective shift was the biggest thing, was the biggest thing. And yeah, but yeah, she's gonna be a great coach. I know.
Wow. She is. Actually, I think I know exactly who you're talking about. And
Oh,
I think she's going to be an
really?
amazing coach too. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, you sound like a future coach to me too, because you're buying the book for your friends and strangers too, complete strangers. So, that's kind of how it starts. You can't stop saying, wait, you've got to, maybe you would enjoy this book. So you sound like you'd be a wonderful coach as well. But so, okay, so what is your marriage like now?
Um, so I was thinking about this question because I've listened to almost all of your podcasts. I think I've listened to at least 200 of them. Um, and I think right now it's peaceful. I mean, I can't remember the last State of the Union talk we had. Like, and for those that don't know what a State of the Union talk is, it's those talks that you say, "Hey, we need to talk." It's those kind of talks.
It goes bad from there. Yeah.
Exactly. And I get a chance to be vulnerable before I didn't know how to be vulnerable. It was all blaming. And just he's just such a romantic. loving, respectful husband. And he uses the skills back at me all the time. He uses whatever you think. That's not my favorite to get it back at me. He says, I trust you.
Oh,
He just recently, like, he started dressing up for dinner, like blazer and everything, just so that we have dinner together. And we dance in the living room. And we have a 9-month-old daughter, and
oh,
we're expecting our second one.
oh.
He's just such a loving father, he's such a loving father. And he's he was very excited for me to come on here. Like he set up the whole desk for me, and every time he would do something, he would say like, "Are you gonna tell Laura this?"
Cute.
Yeah, so he trims my nails, and he was telling me while he was trimming my nails, he said, "Are you gonna tell Laura that I trim your nails?" He knows I'm so embarrassed at that.
Super sweet. Super
Yeah,
sweet.
he's just so sweet. I had written down a few things, but before our baby came, I really wanted a baby moon. And he said, like, he was of the mindset that that's nonsense. Like, who made this up? Like, why do you, what is this? And I just really wanted one. So I expressed a desire. And I think I slightly had an expectation, but I was like, I don't want to, you know
Sure.
how your desire isn't pure. If you have
Yeah, then it backfires, right?
yeah. But I would tell him, and then I would go to my support group and say, like, hey, he said X, or like he would say, like, oh, I want one too, like he would just say things like that. And then one day he came home and he said, oh, I did something. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what did you do? And he actually bought a camper. He bought a camper. He bought a used camper for us to, financially, we're not in the best of states. So it's like, it's not something that you can just purchase, like that. But he saw it and he's like, he knows that I don't like touristy places. I like more like secluded nature, all of that. And he told me, I was thinking when you said that you wanted a baby moon, I've been thinking of like what we can do. And he's been thinking of places and he was planning it. And so, he like bought a whole camper so that I would be comfortable, the big belly, and just it would just be comfortable for us to go on a trip together and have that time together. And it was just so heartwarming. It's so heartwarming. And you have to express your desires. You really do have to. It's just
And
it
that
was
is probably not at all what you thought was going to happen when you said, I would love to go on a baby moon.
no, not at all. No, because
But
he would just make fun of it.
but he actually was thinking about you and how to, and in a way that you never would have thought of, probably. If this would never have crossed your mind, we
Oh
should buy an
no.
RV right now.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I told, and that's the thing, when you don't have a pure desire and or you want to control, you don't allow magic to happen, like true magic to happen, because that's when it really, like, you let them plan it, you let them think about it, and they're so creative sometimes in ways that you really can't imagine, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. That's a great story. Well, and what about shopping for pain? Do you still shop for pain sometimes?
Um, I actually don't. I don't shop for pain. Because I don't like the feeling it gives me. And I don't see the point in it. I do feel triggered sometimes. I want
Sure,
to.
sure.
And I'm very, I think I've learned to be also very good to myself, in the sense of like I know what feels good to me, like what makes me happy really. And yeah, shopping for pain is not what makes me happy. So I have to remember that. But of course, I am human and I do feel the tendency sometimes to want to look through his things. But he leaves his phone out all the time. He leaves his phone out. I know his password. He knows my password. And I don't do it. Even if I feel tempted, I just don't do it. It's not worth it.
That sounds like a superpower, right? Because was that it? Did you ever think you'd be able to say that? Like, I just never do it?
No, no. I thought I would always want to search for opportunities to do it.
And do you have any boundaries or boundamentums? We were calling, yeah, ultimatum boundaries. Do you have any boundaries, like rules that that you oversee that about how he? I mean, I explained it. Remember you were saying
I
earlier,
love
right?
that.
That
Oh, that I oversee.
how would you say it? Remember that was the first approach, right?
Oh,
First, second, and third
absolutely.
approach, maybe, and now you have a different approach, I think. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. And of course that I laugh because it's really funny, but yeah, I did used to like oversee these boundaries, right? Like what are you doing? What I don't have those boundaries anymore. I
You
mean,
know,
actually just recently, and this is what prompted me to be on the podcast because I never felt prepared. I said I'm still not good enough at the skills to, share my story. But recently, something happened in a relationship that was very hurtful. Um, but the way I reacted to it, it wasn't even what happened anymore. It was the way I reacted to it was so different. And I just was able to stay dignified and feel my feelings. It was hurtful. I cried, I felt them. But at the end, we still had the perfect intimacy. Like everything was, like it wasn't like, I'm leaving the home, chase me, none of that. And the thing is, we have a daughter now and we're expecting our second. This isn't a joke. I'm not playing games anymore. And I really need to be my best self for myself and if, because that is our commandments. That is what God expects of us to be our best self. And we go through these things to become our best selves. And yeah, I mean, yeah, now boundaries, I don't know what those are. What are boundaries?
you don't have those now. It sounds like, and this is, uh, this you have superpowers. You definitely have superpowers. It sounds like you're not. Yeah, I hear you. You're not kidding around anymore. But you sound so empowered to be your best self. You sound like you feel good about that and confident that
Oh,
that's how it's going to be.
yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. And of course, it's not perfect. I am
No, of
disrespect
course.
a lot of times. But now I know, like many women say it, like now I know what to do when that's happening. And it's sometimes it's not even yeah, it has nothing to do with the situation. It's all within yourself. Like, oh, I have not had self-care. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, like I something is going on with me and it's all of what's going on with me that I need to fix in order to. And that's empowering. That is empowering.
And you know how to fix it too, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And I'm also super impressed by your accountability. Like, and we were laughing about boundumantums earlier in the call. I've never said it out loud. I think I just type it, boundumantums. I have said it out loud, I'm sure. But anyway, boundumantums. We were laughing because you're so past that. Like that's like the old way. And you think it's funny now, which is such a high level of accountability. I think it's funny now too. I had the same thing as you. We both had boundumantums. But that's such a high level of, this is what I'm responsible for. This is the what I can do. This is what's in my control. And I'm just so impressed at what you've created, this happy family who's going to travel around by RV now. So what's your tip for a woman though who is doing that shopping for pain and finding a lot of evidence that he's got an addiction and he says he wants to stop, but he's said that before and he doesn't want to stop. He's not stopping. And she wants what you have now, where she's she doesn't feel the need and she can stop herself. But and I think and maybe I should have asked about this too. I mean, I think I hear you saying you trust your husband now. Is that right?
I do, and I know he's a human, you know.
Sure.
He's not he does he has, you know, he's gonna have his vices like any other human. And sometimes it's gonna be hurtful, just like I have my vices. So yeah, I do trust him. I trust him, but before that, I trust God. And I trust that God will show me what to do at the moment, for myself, because we have no control over anyone else except ourselves. And when we try to control someone else, we are out of control. And that's, I think that is a codependency term that they use, you know, and even in recovery of addictions, they talk about, you know, like you have to accept that you're out of control. And not until now do I understand that. And why is it you're out of control? It's not just like you're acting crazy. It's you're out of control because you're not on your own paper. You're on someone else's, you know, case. You're trying to control someone else and you are out of control because of it.
Oh, I love that. It's so wise. And so your tip for a woman who wants to be looking forward to her baby moon in her RV, like you are, and dancing in the kitchen and having dinners where he's wearing a blazer to have a nice dinner with you. What's your yeah, what is your tip for her?
Um, I think the biggest life changer for me was you have to go into the skills thinking, not just this is to save my marriage or like this is to fix my marriage. Yes, that you see immediate results with that, but it's a change in perspective for you, and it's a focus on you. Um, it's I would call this, it's the definition of true self-love. There's so much propaganda on self-love nowadays, especially my generations. Very much of, oh, I'm a millennial, so it's all about self-love, no accountability. You know, everyone has to, you share your feelings. You have to share your feelings, and you have to and people have to accept it even if they like it or not, you know. It's like you're not accountable. And yeah, there is some concept of like you have to take care of yourself and all of this, but it's not put in the right light, and it's missing that key piece, which is accountability. And that self-love is not possible without accountability.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. And what do you think you would say if you could go back in time and tell Mina what you know now?
um I would say, you know, you're not a victim. um and as my religion teaches me, I need to go back to my book of deeds. So I need to go back to myself, and to really exploring what I need to change and how to make myself happy. And you know, I don't think I've ever been so happy ever in my life. I know a lot of people are, you know, like before marriage, they're like, it's like, oh, I was happy and then I got married and we had problems. No, it's like I don't think I ever really tasted joy as I do now, even within the struggles, you know, because it all has, like, I've gained perspective, like I've changed my mindset on these things.
So This is a happy journey you've taken.
It
This is, would you say you're ridiculously happy, Mina?
is. Yes, sometimes, unless I'm in needless and emotional turmoil, then
Then you're ridiculously happy. I mean, I love that. I love that. I mean, I'm very impressed with what you've accomplished. And I especially found it so valuable to hear about like, well, I read the book and I was all excited, and then, it kind of went by the wayside. I don't think you're the only one. My story has that element in it too, of like, like, okay, I know that, that's great, but I'd really like to just go back to my old ways now, if that's all right. But that's not where you stayed. You found the courage and the accountability, and you have the commitment to go forward with being your best self, with writing good deeds in your book of deeds. And you've created a beautiful family out of this. And so I definitely want to give you my
oh,
best wife award.
thank you.
Congratulations. You deserve it. You have shown great courage and commitment. I admire it very much, what you've done.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You've been such an inspiration, and just your writing style, everything is very inspiring, and just your accountability, it really teaches us to be accountable and to not be ashamed, not be in that shame circle of, you know, I don't know, like not wanting to share things, because once you're in that shame circle of like I don't want to share my problems with people, then you really are stuck, like sometimes you really need to, but you, of course, the right people, not everyone, but you have to be able to kind of step out of that, and you did it with the world. I don't know how. It's so vulnerable.
Oh, oh, thank you. Well, I'm so glad I did, because that brought you close, right, Mina? This is how we met. And I'm just so grateful that I'm not the only one, and that inspired you to share at equal levels of vulnerability. And now we have this community where we lift each other up and lift up the world. And I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much. Have you fixed a problem in your marriage, big or small, using the six intimacy skills? If so, I would love to hear all about it and have you as a guest on the Empowered Wife podcast. If you're willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce and pay it forward by inspiring other women with your story, go to lauradoyle.org/podcast guest. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast guest. And let me know that you're willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce. I can't wait to meet you. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. On next week's podcast, I'll reveal why husbands cheat and how to prevent it. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I asked John if I seem forgetful lately, and he said no. Do I seem forgetful, Bob?